just read from the Pew Research Center on their website. For those of you unfamiliar with the Pew Research Center, it's a research center that talks about all things across the world, from economics to politics to social issues, all those things. And it does study after study after study on those things. It's very well respected because it has a tried and true method. It does a really good job of getting answers from all demographics in all different areas of a country. So when they say that their sample size is 2,500 people, you know it's not just 2,500 people from New York or Boise, Idaho. It's 2,500 people from across the United States. So I want to read this stat, and while I'm reading it, you may think to yourself, Ruben, what does this have to do with manliness in the 21st century? And I will talk about that after I read the stat. In a study done by the Pew Research Center of over 3,750 United States parents with children under 18, so they all have kids under 18, the number one concern held by the parents for their children was that of mental health. They were worried that their children were going to have mental health issues. Now, this kind of blew my mind. It kind of caught me off guard because I was born in 2000. I do not think that the parents raising kids in 2000 would have answered that way. They would have answered with something like, I am worried my child isn't going to find a great job, or I'm worried my child isn't going to interact well with society, or I'm worried, that my kid won't graduate college or won't be successful on a broad scale. I think those would have been the answers back then for my direct generation. Once again, I was born in 2000. Fast forward a couple years, I think the answers are different. Now, what changed? My generation, the generation born in 2000, was arguably one of the last generations to exist without the widespread adoption of social media and widespread internet use. Now, obviously, it started happening as I was growing up. By the time I was 10, Facebook was huge. By the time I was 15, Instagram was huge. All these social media platforms were popping up. But I was one of the last generations to grow up without that, happening when I was 5. It happened a little bit later in my life. And I think that was really good for me. And I do want to recommend real fast a book. It's called The Coddling of the American Mind by Jonathan Haidt, and it talks about this subject. It talks about the direct correlation, the link between the adoption of widespread social media use and the giant spike in the mental health issues with the younger generations. It's staggering, the results. Okay, so he makes a lot of assertions in his book, and he backs them all up very well. Makes very coherent and logical arguments for them. I highly recommend it if you're into that kind of stuff and you're interested in how has social media affected the culture on a broader scale, and specifically the youth of the culture. So that was the answer by the parents, was they were worried. The majority were worried about mental health issues with their children. Now, let's get to the point where I talk about manliness in regards to this thing. Now, most of the other stats that I've talked about have been about, how is it affecting manliness, or what is this showing about manliness in the 21st century? And this is going to be kind of a negative note, and I'm going to make a broad assertion here. Get ready. And you can disagree. Put it in the comments below if you disagree with me. But I hold the belief that men are called to protect and provide. This is generally a widespread belief that most people would adhere to. They'd say that's true. Now, I also believe that under that protect, heading, there's a subheading. There's actually two. There's just reactive protection, in the sense of something is attacking my family from the outside, I am called to protect it. And no matter what that is, it could be there's a plethora of issues, right? That's the reactive side of things. If something's attacking me, I protect the family. I also think for men, there is a proactive side of this, not a reactive, but a proactive side, where we are called to create communities that benefit men, women, and children. Everyone. Men, women, and children. And I do not think that modern man has done a great job of that. So this section is more a call to action to myself, to you, to all the men out there, to actually begin to create stronger communities and foster communities where They take care of their members, and their members take care of them. I think children right now, a lot of children and teenagers, are feeling incredibly isolated. And I think a lot of that, obviously, like I pointed to previously, is because of, phones and social media and, being in your phone and not being in the world. These are obviously issues that should be addressed. But I think a huge part of addressing those issues is actually just having great communities outside of those things that those kids can run to, that they can become a part of, that will help them to grow, and where they can feel safe because they know that the community's got their back and they can help, have the back of the community. So I think we've failed. I think we've really failed in that department. And, the good news is we can turn it around. I'm an optimist at heart, but I believe we can turn it around if we put our mind to it. And it's a big call to me too. I could do a much better job of supporting my community. Like, my big community right now is my church. I could do a better job of supporting my church community. But whatever your community is, find a way to strengthen it and make it better so that you actually can foster an atmosphere where children can not be afraid of everything, that they can actually fail forward. They can make mistakes but still be given grace and get back up and get back on their feet and, learn from their mistakes. I think that we've done a bad job of creating those communities. And, a big part of that obviously is I think parents in general, but men specifically. It's like we are called to protect, and that's not just to protect the people that are the closest to us. It is, on a broader sense, to protect everybody around us that we can, that is worthy of protection. Obviously, there are people who are crazy and, maniacs and serial killers. Like, obviously, we don't want to necessarily protect those people, but the vulnerable, specifically children, it is our job to protect them, and that is not just a reactive thing; it is a proactive thing. It is going out and saying, hey, we are going to create an amazing community where men, women, and children can thrive. And I think we've done a bad job with that. And there's obviously a lot of people, I'm not trying to discredit the work of people. There are a lot of men who have worked super hard to create amazing, communities that children and men and women can be a part of. But I think on a broad scale, we failed. On a broad scale, most men, myself included, we failed. And we need to do better. And the good news is, we can change. The whole point of this podcast is that you can change. You can make choices. You can be proactive about things, And so I do believe that we can turn that around and we can create these communities that will help everyone to grow and feel like they're part of something bigger than just their phone, and we'll get rid of a lot of these mental health issues that are plaguing our children. Incredibly sad. So anyways, that's all I have to say for the second part of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed. And if you disagree with me, once again, I am not going to shy away from a disagreement. Put it in the comments below. I would love to go back and forth with you if you're a respectful individual. If you're not, get the hell out of here. I don't care about you. So that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching the second part of the Manuscript Podcast. And we'll move on to the third section, which is Ruben Rants.